Hello everyone, thank you very much for inviting me to the ApartTogether event. I am Carlos Mauricio and I'm a psychologist and learning scientist, and I'm here to talk with you about mental health, isolation, and information and communication technologies during the COVID times. Um, I'm a psychologist, let's start from there, but I'm currently doing a research on mental health under isolation conditions during this quarantine or pandemic or isolation times. Let's not call it quarantine, let's call it social isolation. I think is a more accurate concept. And I have learned a lot of things from there, both from the data and from the bibliography review. And I want to share a little bit with you also for you to know how it is, the role that information technologies have when you are under isolation and how they can help you uh, with feelings, for instance, of loneliness. So let's get started. I want to start with a small exercise. So we all know how the pandemic is happening right now, but let's think about how it will have been 20 years ago. 20 years ago, cell phones weren't really a thing. Few people had cell phones. They were very expensive. You have to pay per minute. More or less, internet connection wasn't really something you have on your cell phone unless maybe you were really rich, although the technology wasn't really developed. So it was pretty much only to send SMS, MMS actually. And on top of that, internet was really bad. It was dial-up internet, which means that you have to connect through your telephone, and was very slow and extremely expensive. Um, you have telephone lines, mostly landlines, and you have television, not Netflix, not YouTube, but you have television at least. Some people have cable. Imagine how your life will have been back then. Imagine you with our cell phone, or maybe one of these cell phones that had like these Space Invaders games, and that was it. There were video games, yes. There was a PlayStation 1 and 2, maybe at the turn of the millennium, and yeah, maybe a couple of more distractions. Now, let's continue the exercise and check how would it have been if it was 1 century ago, or actually more than 1 century, at the beginning of 1900s. How would it have been? There wasn't any computers, no televisions. The telephone was already invented, but it was only used for very specific cases, and very few people had it, maybe rich people. Cinemas, not that much, and most of the events were events like the circus, or a theater, or opera, where many people get together um, to share and to look at something, to look at the spectacle. That was the entertainment back then. So, as you can see by our small exercise, if you have lived like now that you're living here, or if you have lived 20 years ago, or if you have lived more than 100 years ago, and this pandemic have happened, your the way you live it will change a lot, and that's thanks to the technology. Right now, you are maybe bored at home, but you have video games, you have television, and you can connect via Skype or other talk, voice and image talk with your friends, but not so much back then. So let me present you the road we have. So how are technologies influencing our life and our quarantine time during this pandemic of the COVID-19? Well, during this talk, I'm going to talk about mental health, pretty much the standard definition of mental health and isolation, uh, a little bit about information and communication technologies, some perspectives about mental health and information and communication technologies, mostly a small part of the debate of if they are good or bad and how they are good or bad. And of course, mental health, information and communication technologies, and isolation under the pandemic. Let's start with the standard definition of mental health. So, mental health is the way your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors affect your life. This definition is made by the American Psychological Association. So, good mental health leads to positive self-image and in turn satisfying relationships with friends and others. So, it's both personal and interpersonal. It reflects both. It reflects both your reality, your inner reality, but it affects the surroundings. It affects your environment. Having a good mental health helps you make good decisions and deal with life challenges at home, work, or school. The better your mental health is, the less stress you will have, the more you will enjoy life, the more you will be able to enjoy things that are enjoyable, and the more you will be able to tackle problems and tackle them in a nice way, like not in a messy way, but systematically tackling them. So mental health really is a big part of our life. Sometimes we don't really realize that, especially if you don't have a mental health problem. You probably never ask yourself about, oh, how my mental health is. You just live with it. But for us that have mental health problems, sometimes it's a struggle even to recognize if something is really a problem or if it's just created in our minds. Now, let's talk a bit about how isolation, specifically social isolation, influences our mental health. Here there is a big discussion actually with my friends, colleagues, psychologists, saying that it shouldn't be called social isolation. Instead, it should be called physical isolation, because it's not like we are distancing each other from each other socially. We are still connected thanks to actually the technology, the internet, thanks to our cell phones, thanks to social media, thanks to all of that, we are connected. So we are actually socially connected. But we are isolating each other from physical connections because that's how the virus is spread and we don't want to spread it, right? So here I call it social isolation because most of, especially governments, say that it's social isolation, but take into account that we are not isolating ourselves socially. We are actually isolating ourselves physically. So one of the things that have been found in lots of different research is depression, symptoms of depression and hopelessness. Oh, that's a difficult word for me to pronounce. These studies are not only people undergoing quarantine or undergoing isolation because of a virus or a disease that's been spread, but also research done in elderly that had a small social network. So studies done in all these type of populations suggest that these people, both during and after the isolation period, develop symptoms of depression such as hopelessness, disorders, eating disorders like loss of appetite or overeating, disruption of sleep patterns, and several others. I really don't want to mention all of them, but just for you to know, that's something that, although is a symptom of depression and can be associated by depression, with depression, it's not necessarily depression. Although other type of research suggests that the more these symptoms persist, the longer they are, the more you are prone to have this maybe develop a depression. However, I'm on Twitch and I'm really on Twitch community. And I heard lots of people, or see it in the chat very often, that people have problems with sleeping. They pass maybe 2 3 days where they cannot really sleep, then they sleep like 12 14 hours in a day. So this seems to be very, very common currently. So if you're happening through that, just know that if you're going through that, just know that there are other people that are going through the same. Maybe it's just good if you communicate that, or if you join an online community to discuss all of this that is happening with you because of the isolation. Another thing that has been found is stress. Actually, stress is super huge related to isolation conditions. Many research, including the one I'm carrying out with my colleagues and friends, suggests that stress is the biggest issue during isolation. Um, Studies have, together with stress, they have found symptoms of other mental disorders such as post-traumatic stress disorder. That, of course, happens mostly after the quarantine period has ended. Confusion, anger, and boredom. Another thing is anxiety. Anxiety is also a big thing during isolation. And anxiety has really many sources. It's not really one thing, but it's very complex to check, because part of the anxiety is what is called health anxiety. And that's the rational. Of course, you can say it's rational because we are under a pandemic and we can all be infected. But is maybe an irrational behavior based on a rational fear, or maybe an irrational fear of infection. And that is, for instance, all this hoarding of toilet paper that we all know by media that people did when all this pandemic started. That's something that is part of it. Like, people are anxious, like something bad will happen, I have to keep at home, cannot go out, the stores will close, it's like the world is going to end, it's catastrophic, so I just gather all I can. And people start doing certain behaviors like washing their hands more often, avoiding people more actively, using an enormous amount of disinfectant in everything. I have actually seen videos of people that wash everything with soap, absolutely everything, cans, bottles, vegetables, everything, because they are afraid of being infected. Which, as I said, in this case, it might be a rational behavior, a rational thought, but the behavior is so exaggerated that it's irrational. Other types of anxiety we can see are regarding the normal life, because the normal life kind of disappears. So people are afraid of losing their jobs, they are afraid of losing money. Many people are afraid of that their business breaks, they go bankrupt, I mean. And also other lots of times, are they able to sustain their family during this time? Will they have any income? And depending on the country you're from, you might get more or less protection from the government. And some people can actually have to go to work and put themselves at risk because they need the money. So in that case, the anxiety about the money overtakes the health anxiety, and obviously it's a risk, but it's there. And different societies, different economic systems, and different people behavior. So okay, and now we see that this is a very important one. It turns out that, as I said, different societies, different people, different economic systems, but is even more complicated than that, because there are also different groups, and scientists have really focused on trying to differentiate which groups are more at risk, or which groups require more attention in these times of isolation. So one of the groups are the elderly. The elderly are not a special group. Well, they are during the corona because of infection and everything, but for these people, the problem is that as many of them start to develop dementia, or some of them even Alzheimer, and they start having all these problems. They have to take medicine, they need someone to take care of them, but then all of a sudden they become a group of risk. So who's going to take care of them? If they suppose one of the daughters of this couple that we have on the screen takes care of them every weekend, goes every weekend, and what do you need? Or suppose every day, all of a sudden she's in contact with the external world. She can be a person that takes the virus there. So how to behave towards them, how to be with them, and isolating at the same time. And of course it's difficult for them because they already, normally very old people already have a very small network, social network, and all of a sudden they are asked to be even more lonely, and that can create a big problems, like as we said, depression, for instance. Other special groups are babies and toddlers and children. Not so much because of the spread of the disease, but because they really don't understand what is happening. There are some behaviors they do, there are some things they do, or some things they need, and all of a sudden they just cannot do it. They cannot go to the park to play, or they cannot just go and I don't know, pet a random dog, or hug a random person on the street. Some children do that, and it's because they really don't know what is happening, and they have to be taken special care of. The other group is the teenagers. The teenagers is a very interesting group, because not only they are on an age that they try to break the rules, and of course the rule here is to isolate yourself, be alone. You shouldn't do anything to spread the virus, right? And of course you want to break that rule. You're a teenager, you want to break rules, you do that. But it's not only because of that, but because they actually need to do it. And at that age they need social contact, they need to go out with friends, they need to break rules as well. So there's a whole lot of things that are happening, for instance, for our teenagers now, that they are not able to live, that we probably could live, because of all this, what is happening. And if they actually go out, break the rules, and hang out with friends, they might actually be putting people at risk. And of course, depending on the country you are, the rules might be more or less strict. And if they are way too strict, then you will get a fine or go to jail. And finally, people with mental health problems. And this is a very big topic. I will try to summarize it. Many pieces of research have found that not only isolation make people with mental health problems, that it increases the problems of people with mental health problems, but depending on the type of isolation, and depending if they have to take other types of medication, that can create even more problems, because the medication can interact or can suppress each other. And for instance, one of the things that have been found is that people that have been put into quarantine and that suffer from schizophrenia, they become they start having more vivid and strongest hallucinations during that type of isolation. Also, people with depression tend to feel more these depression symptoms, like hopelessness, for instance, during this period of isolation. So people that already have a mental health problem are really a special group as well, because to all the problems they already have, they have to sum up all the ones that are coming with the isolation. And of course, if they have to be taken special care of, like under a nurse or someone, then things becomes more difficult. Some problems are actually tackled by building a social network of support, and all of a sudden you cannot meet with that network. So what are you going to do? Now let's talk a little bit about mental health and technology. Okay, so the thing is, um, mental health and technology have been really fighting for quite some time. And many of you have probably seen this image I'm showing to you right now, that before the COVID pandemic, the World Health Organization says, no, video games are bad, they are addictive, blah, blah. And afterwards they said, they are very good. The same World Health Organization said they are good, they can help you coping with stress, they can help you coping with depression. The thing is that, of course, technology is always something new. And as humans, we normally fear the new. And we try to see what is bad or what can be bad on them. Of course, you have all the studies about how technology can be addictive, or different types like video games can be addictive, or yeah. But in general, none of those researchers are pieces of research are um, give a specific outcome. They are very broad, and they really don't say anything about that. On the contrary, there have been lots of research on how video games, for instance, empower people and give them agency, bring them agency, and that can help as coping mechanism. And that is particularly true when we are facing this pandemic, where we cannot control things, then we want to have agency. So we have the bad guys and the good guys in technology. Technology has people has always been afraid of technology, and they will always be. And it can be bad under certain circumstances. For instance, technology can be misused. Technology can be used to spread fake news. It can be used to spread fear. It can be used to manipulate people, like showing, for instance, that the amount of dead people are not as big as they are, and then fostering people to go out and maybe continue the growth of the economy, or maybe even make them so afraid that they go and compulsively buy all the toilet paper in the stores. But as I said before, it can also help us to cope with social isolation. Now, as I said, technology, and this particular slide is about the virus, and it can be not only misleading like all the fake news, but it can also spread fear and increase the health anxiety. With increased health anxiety, then we have more of these hoarding behaviors, and we also have more behaviors that are associated with obsessive compulsive disorder, such as washing the hands way more or using more soap. And of course that eventually can cause problems, because if you use all the disinfectant that you have during the whole day in your hands will be sore, your cells, your skin will be bad, will deteriorate, and eventually will cause health. But also all that stress, all that anxiety will generate stress that will, of course, hit you in the change. How can I say that? Deteriorate your mental health. And of course, you have the good part, and is that you can tell people what to do. Like, thanks to this massive mass media, you can tell people, you should wash your hands, or this is how the virus is spreading, or this zone is the most dangerous to go, don't go there. Remember the exercise we made in the beginning. Imagine how difficult would it be if we tried to make it in the beginning of the 1900s, where, as I said, telephone wasn't really there, and maybe there was newspapers and maybe people telling in the street what was happening. But how can you tell everybody? How can you be sure that everybody will know? And maybe the people there in the town, they never knew, and then they just all got spread the virus and die. You don't know. But now we are very sure that most of people in the world with access to information and communication technologies can have these guidelines. and do something about it. Now, let's go to the part of how information and communication technologies help us in our mental health now that we are isolated. As I said before, we are not socially isolated. We are physically isolated, but socially we are actually kind of together because of the technology actually. So, for instance, nowadays it's very common that we have video conferences. So most of the people that doesn't have to do a manual labor, for instance, teachers or professors, they can always meet by video conference, so they can actually continue working. They are a producing force because they don't have to be totally isolated. They have they can just be in conferences and talk with people and do projects, everything online. So that of course help you take continue a work life, continue a routine that will help your mental health. Another thing is that it allows you to connect with friends. So okay, I'm very bored. I was supposed to go out with this person that I like so much. Well, let's just talk a little bit. Let's talk on the internet and we can see each other. We can do stuff together while we are video conferencing and just talk, just have a chat and maybe drink some tea while we are talking, and is cozy. It's cozy time, and that helps us. Then there are other things like internet communities. I'm personally a Twitch streamer, and Twitch is a great place to be right now. It has actually helped me a lot with my depression because I'm going there, playing some video games and talking with people that I don't know, people which faces I don't know. Sometimes I know them, but then it's just cozy. So my loneliness and feeling of being like not part of the world all of a sudden disappears, and I'm actually part of something. I'm part of this group of people that are playing together with me, and we are talking and we are having fun and laughing. So it's great. So all these communities that are built are really great for helping us. And many people there also tell me that they are going there because it helps them. So it's part of something. Maybe it's not for everybody, although I actually think Twitch is very broad. You even have like makeup tutorials and stuff, but it's just the community. It's the community feeling that helps you not to feel isolated. Then you have things like Netflix. You can stream movies, you can stream series, so you won't be very bored. It's not like, oh, I don't have anything to do. The only thing I could do is to go to the theater. Imagine again the 1900s, and but I cannot go to the theater because it's of course closed, and I cannot leave home. What can I do? Maybe pet the cat all day long. I don't know. But no, now you have things like Netflix, and that helps you as well. It helps you to get yourself distracted. It helps you to get yourself into a different world, into a world with other characters, and then you start developing maybe something that is called I forgot the name of that. Nah, never mind. Let's let it there because I forgot the name. But you start to get attached to the characters. Just let it like that, and start to make them part of your life, which is it's called parasocial interaction. I remember now. So you might start developing parasocial interaction, which is kind of a weird feeling, but it's good anyways because somehow they are the characters are part of your life, and you care for them, and they are there for you somehow. You have video games. Video games are really nice because they give you agency. So when you feel that you don't have control, then all of a sudden you go to the video game and you can do something, and that gives you the control over something. Maybe it's not your life as such, maybe it's not the virus, but You can create worlds like playing Minecraft. You can kill people or demons or whatever. Suppose you play Doom or something, and you can even play with the virus. Imagine Plague Inc. So it really brings you this feeling of, oh, I'm doing something with my life. Now that I am here alone at home, I'm all of a sudden doing something with my life, something that is somehow productive, even though it's in a different world. It's still a world, and I feel connected to it. So it gives you this agency that is so good for you to as a coping mechanism. Something else I have found, I'm particularly interested on studying internet memes, and I have found that memes are actually a very, very good way to deal with this type of coping. Because memes are good as a coping mechanism because it's a satire. Something really bad is happening, but we are making it fun. We are turning it. So it's like turning the enemy into a friend, or the other way around is like when you laugh of the enemy, so the enemy feel less powerful and less dangerous. So that's what we are doing with memes. We take that enemy there that is the virus, and we ridiculize it and make something funny of it, and then it's not only that, but we are also sharing it. So we are being part of this community feeling. We are giving more. We are being there with other people that are enjoying and saying like and saying and laughing at the meme. Maybe we made it, maybe not. Maybe we just share it, but it's fun. And I have found that these virus memes are actually kind of spread and serve as a coping mechanism. And something that has trended a lot lately is this Watch Together. On Watch Together are services. I think Facebook has something called Facebook Party, Watch Party, or something like that, and is where several people get together and watch something like the same thing, the same movie, suppose, and they just watch it together and comment on what they see and what they are feeling and what they like and what they dislike. And it's like watching a movie with your friends sitting on a couch at home, more or less. Well, of course, it's not the same feeling as such, but it helps a lot to people. And actually, in one of the pieces of research I read, they used something like this with a group of elderly people that suffer from depression because of the few social network they have, the small social network they have. And it turns out that it helped them. It helped them to feel less isolated, and it helped them to feel happier. So this is doing something, even though you say, oh, well, but I could just watch it alone. It wouldn't matter. No, actually watch it together with people, even at a distance, is better. It's good, and it helps you. So, this is a short talk, and I think I have already extended myself too much. So let's just go to the summary. We talk about mental health. That is the set of mind and behaviors and feelings we have, and that we want them all to be good and not disruptive. We talk about how not social isolation, well, social isolation, but also isolation affect our mental health in different ways. They create stress, depression, and anxiety mostly, together with other group of things like they can eventually lead to post-traumatic stress disorder and other problems. We talk about information and communication technologies and how sometimes they are good and sometimes they are bad, but sometimes it just depends on the angle you say you look at it or how you're using it. And we talk about how the communication technologies can help us to maintain our mental health during these isolation times that the COVID has brought to us. So I want to finish the talk with this amazing quote from Huremovic, I think it's pronounced. It's from a book about pandemics, psychiatry of pandemics. And it says, when the fabric of social support is ripped by isolation, it should be patched as soon as possible with available technological means, including phones, tablets, and social media. When pre-existing social support cannot be reassembled due to stigma, then it is up to healthcare providers and other volunteers to step up and fill this void. Of course, it also talks about the healthcare providers, but is now that the fabric of the social support, that our social networks are so distant because we cannot be physically together, is the technology that will patch it up. It's by means of the technology that we are working, that we meet with our colleagues, that we meet with our friends, that we play with them online, that we laugh and an internet meme, that we watch movies together, and that we can talk, that we can cry if we want, and that we don't feel so lonely. And sometimes we can still be productive, but these are again thanks to technology. So that's how all of that is helping us. So this is a nice quote. So I want to thank you very much for your attention, and I hope you really like the talk and that you can use it, and that is helpful to you. As I said before, I also have mental problems, and all what I'm telling you is not only part of my research and part of things that I have learned during the years, but also is my own personal learning. So I really hope it's helpful to you, and that we all go out of these hard times together, and we see better days. And finally, of course, I want to give you a small slide of references in the case you want to give it a look. So yeah, maybe I should move because I don't know if you can see the last one, but yeah, okay. So thank you very much for your attention, and I really hope we can go through this together without many problems of mental health. Have a nice day. Bye.